Yep, Nintendo did it again. They probably had one of the best Nintendo Directs that they've had in the entire console history, or maybe even the history of their company. I mean, you had some amazing things shown at this Nintendo Direct. We saw games like Mario Kart World revealed, Discord on the Nintendo Switch, download play features like we had on the Nintendo DS, Switch games on the Nintendo Switch 2 with a Plus mode. Not to mention, we got a GameCube emulator. Finally, we can play Wind Waker, and eventually Pokemon Coliseum and XD Gale of Darkness are coming soon. We got Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4, and then in the same Direct, we got a whole bunch of third-party support like Elden Ring and Bloodborne, but not Bloodborne sequel, plus Kirby Air Riders and Donkey Kong. Oh my God, this Direct stressed me out, but in the best way possible. I was loving every second of it. Except as I was watching the Direct, I was noticing these small things that felt like something was off.
A Nintendo Switch Online membership will be required to use Game Chat. It will be available without a membership for a limited time.
Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour will launch as a paid digital game on the same day as Nintendo Switch 2.
If you already own the Nintendo Switch version of a game, you can play the Nintendo Switch 2 edition by purchasing an upgrade pack.
Through this Direct, it really felt like Nintendo was starting to nickel and dime us. And you know, I get it, it's a new console, there's a lot of cool new features, but especially when they stopped showing prices for it, but saying that we needed to pay for it, that's when I became a bit concerned. So of course, after the Direct was over, I decided to look up how much the console cost, how much the new games were, and how much the new Expansion Plus games were. Yeah, that's a pretty steep price tag. And look, I get it, it's a lot of money, but a lot of people thought that the Switch was going to be $400. But ending up being $450 is a little steep, but it is a new console, and it can play games like Elden Ring, and it can compete with the Steam Deck, which is also $500, $600. I mean, you have people just absolutely slamming this thing for being $450 and slamming the games for being $80, which again, I agree, is a really steep price point, especially right now, given the state of the economy. But I don't think Nintendo is entirely to blame here, and all of the anger towards them, I think, really needs to be directed elsewhere. So let's break this down into 3 things. We're gonna look at areas where Nintendo is actually genuinely being greedy about this console, and then we're gonna look at inflation. And of course, the COVID pandemic and a lot of other things have happened since 2017 that have caused inflation to absolutely skyrocket, at least in the United States, but mostly across the world. And the third thing we have to look at is, unfortunately, tariffs and politics, because this is genuinely probably one of the biggest factors in the pricing of the Switch and these games. But before you finish your commenting, which by the way, you should like and subscribe as well since you're already down there flaming me, I'm gonna give you the things that you're valid about your anger with at Nintendo. The first point is probably the most egregious above all, which is the price of Mario Kart World, sitting at a whopping $80. And I think this is the first party game I've seen in a very long time that has been set at that price point. I remember on Twitter when people were raising hell about Tears of the Kingdom and a bunch of other games in the industry at the time being $70. But it seemed like the general consensus was a begrudgingly, yeah, okay, I get it, there's been inflation, we'll give you the 70. Obviously, it sucks to not be able to buy a new game on the launch day of a console, especially because you're priced out of it. But it is especially egregious because the game chat feature of the Nintendo Switch 2 seems to be the main gimmick. And yes, they do have game share, but if it's anything like it was on the Nintendo DS, there will be features that you miss out on. So to put Mario Kart, one of the most sought after and best-selling games on the Nintendo Switch, under an $80 price tag is absolutely egregious. Now, I will give Nintendo credit where credit is due. If you do want to buy Mario Kart World, you can buy the Mario Kart World and Switch 2 bundle. It runs you a whopping $500, which again, is not an easy price to pass. Half a rack is a lot of money, especially in these times. Maybe they'll have some living support for Mario Kart World instead of asking for DLCs. I don't know, maybe that's just wishful thinking. If they ask for a dime more for any kind of added content with Mario Kart World, I think that's going to be completely unacceptable. I'm not here to defend that. But there was also a bunch of small things throughout the Nintendo Direct that really made this feel like they were kind of nickel and diming us at every turn. The first thing that really tipped me off to all this nickel and diming was this Nintendo Switch 2 tour video game, which is supposed to be this like tutorial of how you explore your Nintendo Switch, but for whatever reason, it's not a pack-in title. You have to pay money for this. And I'm like, maybe $1 or $2, I could pay for that, but why is it not a pack-in? It's a tutorial game. What are we on about? What do you mean? You want me to boot up Donkey Kong and then put my credit card information in just to learn how to play the controls of the game? Like, what are we doing, Nintendo? Come on. And then there's the upgrade pack for the Nintendo Switch games, which if you have Nintendo Plus Online, you do get for free. I think most of them, but there are some upgrade packs that do cost money, and they range from $10 to $20 now that we know after the fact, which I do understand to an extent because there is technically new content. So this is almost like a DLC that we're getting for the games on Switch 2, which gives us like, a bunch of games that we have on launch day to play and try out. Again, not the most egregious, but definitely like makes your head turn a little bit as to why they're charging so much for what they're charging. And then there's the Seed Chat button, which this benefit looks really cool on paper, and it is going to be provided to everybody for free for the first year of the console's life. However, after that first year, you have to have a Nintendo Switch Online membership. And if you don't, that button is completely useless to you. You can't have any game chats, you can't have any screen share, you can't have Discord calls. Everybody's going to go fleeing back to Discord and nothing's going to change. I think Scooter said it best in his video that the C button doesn't stand for chat, but it actually stands for credit card. I find it wild that this is one of the main new gimmicks of this system, but Nintendo has decided to put a paywall behind this button. It's just a little bit scary that the main gimmicks of the Nintendo Switch 2 are becoming more and more things that are either paywalled or they're going to have limited life on their shelves after the fact in the secondhand market. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to probably use the game chat feature all that often because I'm an adult and I use Discord all the time. But when you have kids and you know Discords can be very dangerous and people can invade Discords with very dangerous thoughts and different types of spaces, having a voice chat system for kids and people that are younger that's native to the console is super important. But putting it behind a paywall and forcing parents to pay for that is kind of ludicrous. And I'm not saying that they need to be able to play multiplayer with each other all the time. I'm sure we can still continue to do that with the Nintendo Switch Online membership, but we need to have something here that meets us in the middle. And that's all the areas where Nintendo is actually greedy, but even some of these things where they're being greedy, air quotes, can be explained away with inflation. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, if you bought a $60 game back in 2017 or during the release of the Nintendo Switch, it would cost about almost $80. If not, I think it's $75. Look at my notes. $75, yeah. It's like $75, okay. Also, according to the U.S. Bureau, if you bought a $300 console back in 2017, then it would cost almost $400 now in 2025. Now, this isn't me trying to defend Nintendo necessarily, but inflation has hit everybody hard, and it's something that we have to take into the calculations when we want to increase the price of games and goods around us. I will say that math doesn't add up. They're not charging $400, they're charging $450. They're not charging $75, they're charging $80. Now, there is a bit of a markup, and again, that can be attributed to the greed or the increasing the profit margins over at Nintendo. But you can't be absolutely floored when we have a new generation that's coming out and they want to increase the price of their games even a little bit. I'm not saying Nintendo isn't being greedy and doesn't deserve some flack, but there's probably 100 other people that you can go through that are being greedy and are causing inflation and are causing wage stagnation that you really should be directing your rage and anger at instead of Nintendo. Now, I think there's one more factor that we haven't considered that they're trying to factor in and almost future-proof the console so that they can continue to keep their profit margins at Nintendo. And that, of course, is the tariffs and Donald Trump.
We're gonna win so much, you may even get tired of winning.
Donald Trump in the United States has kept his campaign promises of wanting to apply tariffs across the board. He has threatened to apply them, then repeals them, then applies them again, and then he's been saying that he's going to apply global tariffs across the board, across every nation on Earth. And on the exact same day that the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct was, we had Liberation Day, where he applied global tariffs of 10% on unspecified countries. And then on this list here, he applied a bunch of tariffs on a bunch of these countries that are listed up to 20 and 30%. So if I'm Nintendo and I wanted to future-proof my profit margins or just the ability to make some profit off of my console and games, I definitely would have to take into account the fact that there's these tariffs to one of our largest markets in the entire gaming ecosystem. Japan has a 24% tariff applied to it today as of recording this video, which means Nintendo that has to import a $60 game into the country, they have to pay $14 of that $60 to import it into the United States. I made a tweet that these tariffs were affecting the gaming prices of Nintendo and the Switch 2, and people absolutely clowned on me. But then there was article after article from Kotaku to Bloomberg to a bunch of other places that said that these tariffs are making the prices of the Switch and these games go up. And while editing this video the next day, Nintendo actually decided to delay the pre-orders in the United States due to these tariffs. I also don't mention that there was a 40% tariff based in Vietnam, which Nintendo pushed their production to Vietnam to try and avoid said tariffs. So Nintendo is either going to change the price of the Nintendo Switch 2 and all of its games or anything else that it imports from Vietnam or from mainland Japan, or they're probably just waiting out to see if the Orange Man is going to go back on his tariff promises and undo the tariffs that he applied earlier this week. I know if I was Nintendo, I would as well. And there's even more evidence that these threatened tariffs and now applied tariffs are factored into the price of the Nintendo Switch 2 and their games, because in Japan, the Nintendo Switch 2 markets for $340 after conversion. And any time in the history of the world when there's ever been a trade war in tariffs, the customer is always the person who bears the burden to pay that tax. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably saying to me that the European and other international versions of the Switch are also $450. Well, it's become known that the Nintendo Switch in Japan is actually region locked, so you can't really take it out and play any other games on it. Maybe you might be able to change the language, but it is a region locked Japanese only Switch, while the other versions of the Switch are all international versions where they can be played anywhere and shipped across the globe. And I think that they've priced it the way that they have, maybe out of greed to recover some of their profit margins from all these trade tariffs, but to also stop Americans and people within this market from flooding other markets in Canada, Mexico, Europe, and taking and scalping Switches from their markets. And so while Nintendo is definitely to blame for some of the costs that have increased on the Nintendo Switch 2 and its games, you should also be mad at Donald Trump, the tariffs, and the state of the economy that the billionaire class has put upon us and the fans. These prices are egregious, do not get me wrong, and maybe there will be some deals and stuff maybe in the holiday season that will decrease the price of the console and its games. But I found a great video on Twitter from this person named Misclick.
I do want to preface this entire watch through of I am well aware just how expensive life is in general right now. If you're looking at this and you're like, I cannot afford this right now, that is absolutely okay. No one should feel like so driven by the fear of missing out that you would put yourself in a financial hole to buy this right away. Some of these games aren't even rolling out for a couple months. Take your time, don't feel stressed. And if you see people with this, they're either getting sponsored or they have the extra money or they're a creator and that's like what they do. So it's also like a tax write-off or something. Video games are entertainment, they're luxury. Take your time, save up.
So as they say, don't feel pressure to buy something that you don't need or can't afford at this moment. Please make smart economic decisions, but also channel your anger about these prices in the state of the world towards the right people. If you want to see more content about the Switch 2, make sure you subscribe because I'm going to be getting my hands-on experience with the Nintendo Switch 2 this weekend and posting about it all along the way. Thanks so much for watching.